Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1312. Today I'm celebrating the Coyote Creek Concours that takes place on June 23rd at the Coyote Creek Golf Club in Morgan Hill, California. To learn more, go to the coyotecreekconcours.com website.
People don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, automotive enthusiasts. I'm revved up and so excited to introduce today's very special guest calling in from beautiful San Jose, California, Dave Dell'Aquila. Hey, Dave, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I sure am.
All right. Dave Dell'Aquila is a senior user experience designer who was the product designer for eBay Motors, a site that we all love to visit. I go there way too often, by the way. He is the founder and CEO of Sports Car Adventures, a company that provides tours in classic sports cars around the back roads of Northern California. Dave is also in charge of the Coyote Creek Concours Drive that takes place on June 22nd, a day before the Concours. As a lifelong automotive enthusiast, Dave started with a 1968 MGB-GT his parents gave him in college. I think we're going to learn a little bit about that car. He and his family are regular participants in rallies around Northern California, and they have amassed a collection of great driving automobiles that include an MGA twin cam, Triumph GT6 Plus, an MGB Roadsters, BMW E36 M3 and E39 M5, some of my favorites, and a 2.5-liter Mazda MX-5. So Dave, I've told our listeners just a little tiny bit about you. Would you take a brief moment and share a little more about your career and a very obvious passion for not only automobiles, but driving them?
You bet. Thanks. I want to first thank you for having me on your show. And,
you're welcome.
And also stop me if you've heard any of this before. So
that's a little insider joke between Dave and I. I'm not going to stop you today, my friend. You just go pedal to the metal.
Appreciate it, Mark. Yeah, it's really an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
Long-time listener, really love it. So first of all, about my name, Dell'Aquila. All the Italians in the audience will know I'm mispronouncing it. In Italy, it's pronounced Dell'Aquila, but it actually means from the eagle. There's a little town in Italy called L'Aquila, but actually, my story really starts with my grandfather. He came from Italy in a little town called Caserta. And when he was 16, he came over to New York in 1906 with $50 in his pocket and really made a great life for himself. And interestingly, my story is kind of a lot about the apple not falling far from the tree. And what's interesting is that my grandfather actually started out as a bike mechanic and had a lot of interesting mechanical skills. He was a welder, and he was also really into cars. He had a couple of old Packards. And while he was in New York, he got married, had 5 kids. My dad was the 5th of 5 kids. And long story short, he joined the Air Force when he was a teenager and came out to California and fell in love with California, really loved the weather and set up shop here. And interestingly, he came out here in the early 60s and landed a job at Fairchild Semiconductor and really was at the beginning of the whole really Silicon Valley revolution that started around the time. And interestingly, my dad wasn't a real huge car fanatic, but he had a couple of interesting cars. And one of the things about his job was it allowed him to move his family to Japan. So when he worked for Fairchild, he moved to Japan to set up training facilities for the Japanese manufacturing companies over there to use Fairchild test equipment. And while in Japan, that's when I was born. And so another unusual thing about my background, I was born in Tokyo. And while he was there, he purchased a 1966 Opel Kadett L, a 4-door Kadett L, in Japan, which he picked up in Germany at the factory and then drove all throughout Europe. So really, that was my first big road trip that I did. Unfortunately, don't remember. I was only 2. But yeah. I think that may have actually influenced my love for road trips later on. And so if we fast forward a little bit, I was raised in Silicon Valley, which is right at the heart of where Apple Computer is, and my passion for cars really started around age 10, when on a business trip to Europe, I went along with my parents, and through some of his business dealings, he actually knew the chief engineer of Maserati at the time, which so I was able to get a tour of the Maserati factory by Giulio Alfieri, the chief engineer. Yeah, it was a big deal in it. And for the rest of that trip, I remember studying those owner's manuals for the Boras and the Meraks and the Kempsons, and became an expert on those cars and really gave a lot of the dealers back in California a hard time. because
you knew more than they did.
Yeah, it was really a funny thing. And so the Boers will actually come back and play a role in my life a little bit later on. But when I was in high school, my first job was at a bike shop. And I think that really was what kind of got me interested in things that are in mechanical things and understanding how things worked. And in fact, I saved up my money mowing lawns and bought an Italian super bike. I bought a Paletti Super Record, which is, full count yellow.
Yeah.
And I raced it for a little while when I was 18. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Computers were starting to take off at the time. And so I decided to study computer science at UC Davis. So moved to Davis, started studying computer science. And about the same time, my parents had purchased the MGB-GT.
Yeah.
And they handed that car down to me when I was in college. And so I didn't really know the background of the car at the time. But I really liked it. And my wife and I, who was my girlfriend at the time, we took the car up to Canada for the World's Fair in 1986. And the car ran great. And that was one of my next big road trips. So a little bit later, I landed a job in the high-tech field back in Silicon Valley and started my career as a user experience designer, as you alluded to. And what's interesting about the user experience design is that it's something that actually is what my love for cars is all about. If you think about cars, they really are the ultimate user experience machine. And so I was quickly drawn into the world of user experience because my job is to make using software a fun and pleasurable experience. And so for the next 10, 20 years, I was focused on this, and the MG started to suffer from a little bit of neglect. And during this time, we had two boys, and they had an interest in the car early on, probably because of my older brother, who's actually his full career is working on classic sports cars. And we would spend every year camping at Laguna Seca for the Monterey Historics. And then they became interested in the MG. Actually, that car became sort of their classroom for how to work on cars and how to drive cars as well. They both learned how to drive on that BGT.
How cool. That's cool. I love the way it came all the way back around to the third generation. Yeah.
And so it's been an interesting ride. And in fact, it's fun talking about my automotive path because so often I end up talking to people about my experience with the with software design when really my true passion is with automotive.
With cars, yeah. Well, I have a lot of guests on the show whose their main career is not in automotive, but they found ways to wrap their passion into all the different parts of their lives, just like you have. And we're going to learn a lot more about this as we move through your journey. But first, I like to ask my guests for a success quote or a mantra. This is a nice way to get the inspirational tires spinning here on Cars. Yeah. So, Dave, I know you love to drive. Take the wheel.
Thanks. Yeah. I think I have a bunch of things that I try to pass on to my kids to try to help them be happy and successful. But I try not to view problems as obstacles and really try to view them as learning opportunities, and that you're really never too early to learn new things and to never stop learning. And I really like Benjamin Franklin's quote about people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
Yeah, most definitely. Absolutely. I love that quote too by Franklin because people just go, why did this not work? You go back and ask them, what did you plan to see this thing all the way through? Did you do any planning or did you just jump in head first? Kind of like going out to the pool at night and diving in and then you forgot to make sure there was enough water in the pool. Most definitely. Planning and then working your plan. That's another one of those quotes in business. Build a plan, work your plan is so important. And I guess it goes all the way back to Boy Scouts. Be prepared by having a plan. Don't just hike off into the woods and hope that everything goes well because you might get lost or you might run into a bear. Would you go back and share a story that instigated this passion you have for cars? Now, you really already told us this story with the MGB, but maybe there was a pivotal moment in that experience that helped you realize, you know what, I'm a car.
Yeah, well, my automotive journey, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I started out with a couple of fairly mundane cars. My first car was a 74 Fiat 124, and that I was handed down from my mom. And when I got that car, that's when she got the MGB-GT. And then I got the GT when I was in college, and we sold the Fiat. And my first new car actually was a 92 Acura Integra LS Special, which put a lot of miles on that car. Actually, we still have it. It's got over 230,000 miles. It just won't die.
Wow.
My youngest son is driving that now. And I had that for about 15 years when I was getting to the stage where either call it a midlife crisis, wanting something a little more interesting, but I fell in love with a third generation Mazda MX-5. And when I got that car, boy, talk about a great user experience. It just does everything right. It just is such a fun car to drive. And what's interesting is that even though I grew up in Silicon Valley, I must have spent a couple of decades just working in the valley. And what's interesting is that valleys are surrounded by mountains, and we've got some killer mountain roads that I knew that I used to train on when I was on my bike, but I never really put a great driving car together with those roads, and it completely transformed the way I started thinking about cars. And I think that's really when my automotive journey took off, is when you appreciate a well-balanced machine that's designed for driving fun roads, and that's when really the wheels started turning. And I said, this is an experience that a lot of people never get to enjoy, and that's really kind of what led to my interest with sports car adventures.
Absolutely, and we're going to learn about sports car adventures in a little bit. But first, I want you to talk about a big challenge or a big failure that you faced. Kind of walk us through that challenge that you had. Tell us, kind of get dirty, get your fingers under the hood, and get them a little greasy. But more importantly, what did that situation teach you that was valuable so that you could move forward in a positive way?
Yeah, so this is an interesting story, and we're going to go to a little bit of a dark place. So
okay, that's all right. That's all right. We'll come back out on the light with the light on the other end. I promise.
So the 68 GT, as I mentioned, I've had it for a long time, and as my wife and I, we moved a couple different houses, the GT followed us along, and as my boys were old enough to drive it, as I mentioned earlier, they were active participants in some vintage rallies. Hopefully, we'll talk about that in a bit. So when my younger son actually was about 16, he called me up when I was actually out on a drive myself and asked if he could take the MGB-GT out on his own, and I was a little reluctant, but I wanted to trust him, and I wanted him to feel like he had that kind of freedom to do that. So I agreed to let him do it. And 30 minutes later, I get a call. He's crying. Of course, I asked him what happened. He goes, "I totaled the MG." And I went, "Oh my God!" Of course, I asked him if he's okay at first, but then it's like, what happened? And he couldn't even talk. And so we drove over to the where it happened, and the whole front of the car was just completely in, and it was being pulled up onto a flatbed. And I really had a parenting moment here where I could have grounded him for life. I could have gone that route, but I said, you know what? Let's make this a learning opportunity. And thankfully, he was okay. And I said, well, the car looks like we can repair it, but of course, you're going to pay for it. But what I want to happen is I want you to do all the work on it yourself. And so that he would gain an appreciation for what went into the car and really get a sense of what the car means to myself, my wife, and our family, because we've had it for such a long time. And the good news is that he did a fantastic job getting it all back together, and it really did teach him about how old cars are put together and really how to take care of them. And he's formed a terrific appreciation for it. And in fact, he's just started a job as an apprentice at a high-end British classic car restoration shop here in Morgan Hill. So yeah, it's got a happy ending. And if you see the car, you'll notice it because the area that was damaged, I've left in primer, just as a reminder for making sure that you don't exceed your own abilities, and you have to respect the machinery.
Well, especially old machinery, because it doesn't stop as quick. These new cars we have these days have really dumbed down drivers because they do things so well. They're so safe. You can have horrific accidents and walk away. And in an old car, you can die really quick. I love the example you gave here of teaching him a lesson versus what many adults would do is either come unglued and ban him from ever driving the cars, or worse, oh, well, we'll just get you another car. And believe me, I've seen many people do that, and the kids learn absolutely nothing out of this situation, and they go on to crash the next one and the next one and the next one. It's horrific. So it's just a wonderful story with a very, very happy and positive ending. What an awesome story. See, I know we were going to come out in the light here at the end. I knew there was going to be a little excitement at the end. I think that's great. Well, let's have a little bit of fun. Now, again, you've already kind of touched on this. I like to ask my guests about their first really special car. So maybe this moves forward in your life to a car that you saved up for, a car that was really special for you, and give us a memory you have about that ride.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this question, and of course, the GT really is a special car. And what's interesting is that it sat in my garage for such a long time, and I didn't really fully appreciate just not only how much fun the car is to drive, but what a rich history the BGTs have, and MGBs in general. They raced at Sebring, they won their classes in '62, and really have a tremendous rallying history. And it wasn't until I started looking into that history that I realized that the car that I had since I was in high school, it really is a remarkable piece of automotive history that not only be cherished and enjoyed, but also really respected for what it accomplished. I mean, before the Miata showed up, the MGB was the best-selling sports car in the world.
Yeah,
and
they're great. They're so much fun to drive.
Yeah, they really are fun.
Yeah, I love them. How about seller's remorse? Is there a car you've let go that you really wish you had back?
Not really. One of my problems is I don't like to sell my cars. I like all the ones that I have, and
good for you.
I'm ashamed to say I'm up to a little over 20 right now.
Hey, I love it.
And so I don't have any sellers remorse because I haven't really sold anything yet. So
wow. Well, I'm jealous. There's so many that I've let go, and I had a 1,312 past guess, 1311. You're 1,312. Lots of sad stories here about letting cars go. So you're a wise guy you're not a wise guy. You're a wise man for keeping all your cars.
And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people, when they see the MGs, they say, my dad used to have one of those things, or my uncle used to have it, and I loved that car. They sold it, or I had to sell it when I had a kid. And boy, everybody has that story. And
they do.
I didn't want to have that happen to me. So
I've got a bunch of them. Well, let's talk about today and what has you excited and fired up. I know that you're involved in the Coyote Creek Concours.
Yep.
I've been working hard to promote them through my podcast here. It's a fantastic event that takes place on June 23rd, but you are the guy in charge of the tour.
That's right.
The day before on the 22nd. A shout out to Kathy Pedoni, who has put this whole thing together. I would love for you to talk about what you have planned, how much fun these tours are, because I participated in a bunch of them. The last one I did was with the La Jolla Concours in a 1931 Bentley. Drove all over San Diego County in that thing. Wow, what fun. The event takes place at the Coyote Creek Golf Club in Morgan Hills, California, just south of San Jose. So tell us about this tour you have planned.
Yeah, we have a really fun day planned. And I want to also say thank you to Kathy and Steve for allowing me to be involved in the organization of this event. Now, as you know, I mentioned earlier that I love driving. I love organizing tours. That's really what Sports Car Adventures is all about. And so what I've designed here is about a little bit less than 80-mile backroads drive starting from the Coyote Creek Golf Course. And we're going to make our way down on some of my favorite roads. In fact, a lot of the roads we take on Sports Car Adventures. And we're going to end up at the Laguna Seca Raceway. And we're going to do a couple of parade laps.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, before lunch. So I think we're going to have a really fun time. We've got about 50 cars already signed up. It really is some of the prettiest roads in the South County area that I think a lot of people who may have lived in the area for a while might not even be aware of. So I tried my best to come up with an interesting route that shows off some of the more enjoyable roads in our backyard.
What are some of the cars that are going to be participating in the tour?
I just looked at the list the other day, and there's going to be quite a few Ferraris. We've got several Corvettes, which are the two featured marks. But it's going to run the whole gamut. I know that there's going to be several MGs, a couple of older British sports cars, a couple of older American cars. But yeah, we're going to have a pretty good selection of stuff out there. So it should be fun.
Sounds like fun. Now I want you to talk more about Sports Car Adventures, this sidepreneur business that you have. Tell our listeners how it works, the fact that you have cars for them to drive so they can experience different kinds of cars on tours. So give us your best pitch here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The whole idea started when I found out about the local Northern California vintage rally scene. There's sort of the high dollar events like the California Melee. So the idea for Sports Car Adventures came about after I completed a number of the Northern California vintage rallies, which are 2-day driving events that are for pre-1975 cars. And they're really all drivers' cars. So we're talking MGs, BMWs, Porsches, Alphas, Jags. And we just have a great time. It's really a fun event. And it's really one of the things that I enjoy most of all doing nowadays. And I thought, boy, there's probably a lot of people that would love to do something like this, sort of experience what the old rallies must have felt like driving these old machines. But people can't necessarily afford to have or store and take care of a vintage car. So I thought, what a great idea for a business. Make these older cars available to folks. We'll take them on short drives so they get a feel of what it's like to drive a true analog sports car, which is so different than a lot of the modern cars. And we seem to be getting towards this era of eliminating driver engagement, whereas these older cars are all about driver engagement. And unless it's kind of like surfing, and I know you're a surfer, and so I think you know what I'm talking about. And I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast appreciates a fine driving machine. And I think there's just a lot of folks, especially younger generations, who don't have access to these kind of things. So the idea behind Sports Car Adventures is severalfold. One, to allow people to get behind the wheel of a true sports car and take it on get an experience. And as people get more experience under their belt with our drives, then we can do more and more complex, more sophisticated drives. And so also, planning tours like the one for Coyote Creek Concours, and just generally getting people that love driving old cars together and enjoying them together. That's really what it's all about.
It's fantastic. Where can people learn more about signing up to take one of your tours?
So you can go to my website, which is sportscaradventures.us. And I also have an Instagram account, Sports Car Adventures, where I post a lot of photos from the drives and just a lot of the interesting car-related events that I do.
Cool. Is it sports with an S, Sports Car Adventures?
That's right.
Okay, make sure I get that right. Well, Dave, up next is the last lap. Before we put the pedal to the metal, let's say thank you to today's Cars Yeah sponsors.
Hey, fellow automotive enthusiasts, you know I'm a huge fan of Covercraft. I've protected my vehicles with their products since 1975. That's right, all the way back to my high school days. Want to keep your vehicle's exterior and interior looking new? It's easy with a Covercraft car cover. A car cover is the best way to keep your vehicle looking great for years to come. Car covers protect your paint from fallout, birds, dust, rain, insects, and pollen. It's a fast, easy, and inexpensive way to keep your vehicle looking new. I use my Covercraft car covers every single day. Right now, you can get 10% off all Covercraft custom car covers or their ready-fit car covers. Plus, they offer you over 15 quality fabrics to choose from. Their spring sale is from April 15th through June 16th, 2019. Order direct at covercraft.com and tell them Mark at Cars Yeah sent you. Covercraft is the right choice. Learn more today at covercraft.com. That's covercraft.com. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. Hey, Mark Green here from Cars Yeah. Did you know you can now see me on the Cars Yeah TV show? It's a weekly visit to some of my past Cars Yeah podcast guests, and I take you along for the ride. You go behind the garage door and into their lives, their businesses, and you get to see what makes them successful. With tens of millions of viewers, Cars Yeah TV is making its mark. Cars Yeah TV is available on MAV TV and Lucas Oil Racing TV. You'll find MAV TV on Direct TV, Fubo TV, Fios by Verizon, or you can stream it through Lucas Oil Racing Television online. And they said I only had a face for podcasting.
All right, we are back, and I have a very introspective question for you, Dave. Kind of put you on the psychologist couch, the car psychologist couch. If you woke up tomorrow and you were a vehicle, you were actually manifested into a car, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself as a car, a truck, or a bike, what kind of car would Dave be and why?
I think it'd have to be the 1968 MGB-GT. And the reason for that is that it's an honest car. It's not pretentious. It really doesn't try to be anything that it's not. It's got a really kind of an interesting history. As I mentioned earlier, it was rallied in some of the legendary road rallies like the Monte Carlo and the Sebring. It's easy to maintain. No special tools required. And if it's really taken care of properly, it'll last a lifetime. It's versatile, good looking. It's got Italian design. Not a lot of people know that the GT is designed by Pininfarina. Yeah. And most of all, I think it's easy to fall in love with and fun to be with. So I think that would be the car that I would be.
Just like Dave. Absolutely. Perfect description. I love it. All right. We are entering the last lap. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some very quick blips of that MGB throttle. So here we go. What's the best automotive advice you've ever received?
I think it'd have to be, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. And don't fall in love with the car you're considering purchasing, and always be prepared to walk away from a deal. Don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah, I always advise bring a friend who's very skilled and knowledgeable about that car and tell him to talk you out of it. That usually works pretty well. Would you share one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your many successes over the years?
Always try to have a positive attitude, and always try to view problems as opportunities to learn something new.
Yeah, that's one thing I know about you, Dave. That's a great way to go through life. Fantastic. How about a resource? Would you share one with our listeners that you've learned a lot from and you enjoy?
Well, I think the internet is probably one of the most amazing resources that's come to the car world in the past 30 years. And it's transformed the way people work with older cars. And so, of course, eBay, I think, is a great resource. But I think even more so, Instagram has turned out to be a tremendous resource for not just marketing, but also finding other people that have similar interests and learning about other companies. I found out about so many companies I never knew existed through Instagram because I'm following keywords that would also appeal to or apply to these other businesses. And it's turned out to be a tremendous resource. So,
I think I've made 3 purchases in the last 2 weeks because of Instagram ads for products I never knew existed.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You wonder if they know what you're thinking. It's a little spooky.
It is a little bit creepy, but but it's turned out to be, it's like, I could absolutely use one of those things. And then I think if I were to add one more, I would say I love Petrolicious. And I think that, it really does capture the essence of what we're all talking about in terms of the passion for these older machines. And they really do have soul. And I think they do a great job of capturing that in their videos.
Yeah, Afshin, the founder of that show, has been a guest here on Cars Yeah. I love the Petrolicious movies. He's done a fantastic job with that brand. In fact, when I started Cars Yeah podcast, I really wanted to do videos like that, but I don't think I had the checks or the funding that he got somehow, because I just thought, how am I going to pull that one off? That's expensive. But he definitely has done a fantastic job with that and just keeps growing. Really fun to watch. Now, if you could have a drink with anyone in the automotive industry, living or deceased, who would it be?
Another great question. I thought about this, and I had to narrow down the list to folks that I think have something to do with user experience and really just making the automotive interesting for people to do. And Cecil Kimbler came to mind. A lot of people don't maybe not know that he's the guy that founded MG Cars back in the late 20s. But Ken Miles, another person a driver and a mechanic that really did Mario Andretti, Enzo Ferrari, Carroll Shelby, Sterling Moss.
Oh my gosh! I was only going to say a drink. You got a whole dinner party going here.
But in fact, I think the name that comes to mind would be Giorgetto Giugiaro, the person who designed some of those beautiful early cars that I saw when I was 10 at the Maserati factory. But he also did the Alfa GTVs, the De Tomaso Mangusta, the BMW M1, Lotus Esprit S1, DeLorean, just tremendous works of art that are timeless classics, and I really admire his work. I would love. Yeah,
I believe he designed the first new car I ever bought, which was the first generation VW Scirocco.
I think you're right. Yeah,
I remember that, and used to think, wow, I've got a car designed by a really famous guy here who designed some wonderful sports cars, and that was a great car too. I had it for 9 years actually. It was a wonderful car, daily driver. Great ride, absolutely. How about a book? Is there a book that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, another good one. I loved Go Like Hell, which I just found out they're making a movie into, which is supposed to be out later this week.
Christian Bale's going to play Ken Miles.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's going to to see. I'm anxious to see how they portray Ken and Carol. It's going to be really a great story. But the book is fantastic. I highly recommend everybody read that. But honestly, I think the one that really made a big difference for me is a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, a Stanford professor. Yeah. It's really about how your personality and your intelligence. Those are things that can be changed with a little bit of work. If you just change the way you think about things, you can have a positive influence on everything around you and the things that happen to you. So I was really impressed by that book, and I recommend it to people.
Great book, absolutely. And AJ Baim, author of Go Like Hell, has been a guest here on Cars Yeah. So you can go back in the Cars Yeah website and listen to my talk with him. Fascinating guy. I'll remind your listeners you can find all these great resources that Dave has shared with us today on his very own Cars Yeah show notes page. Just type in Dave Dell'Aquila. I'll give you a spelling there. DELL''AQUILA. And all these great resources will pop right up. All right, Dave, we're up to the checkered flag, and this last question can be a real doozy. Today, I'm going to buy you any cool collector car on the planet, but there are some rules to this game that are going to make it very hard for a guy with a garage like yours. You can't sell it to buy a bunch of other cars with. You have to drive it. That's not a hard one for you. But here's the kicker. It's the only collector car you can have in your garage. That's what's going to make it hard for you. So what can I buy you today, Dave?
That's a tough one, Mark. You know, I really had to rack my mind. But I zeroed in on just an absolutely stunningly beautiful car. It would be the 1955 Maserati 200S, the Tipo 52. And it's not the big 250S or even the Tipo 61, the birdcage, but it's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit it's I think a little bit purer car. It's back to the fundamentals. It's a 2-liter double overhead cam with double Weber DC03s, and only 28 of them were made, and it competed in a lot of the big events in the late 50s and early 60s. Did quite well, but it's just such a beautiful car. I actually saw one at the Historics at Monterey and just fell in love with the car. It's just really beautiful.
That's a sexy car. I mean, that thing is just so gorgeous. And yeah, what's fun about it is you can drive it on the track or the road.
Yeah,
it's one of those cars. It's a crossover car. Everything about it is absolutely fantastic. The only bad part of that car for me is it's going to be very expensive for me to buy you this car. Oh my gosh. That's okay. I think you'll take good care of this thing and definitely take it on a lot of drives there in Northern California. Absolutely. And enjoy it, which is what those cars need to be done. And I believe I saw that same car at Laguna Seca, having gone to the Historics for 30 plus years now. So yeah, they're just nothing bad about the 55 Maserati 200S Tipo 52. Dave, you've taken us on a great tour today. I knew you would, because that's what you do. I've enjoyed your stories, and I want to thank you for sharing your journey. Could you give us a parting piece of wisdom or guidance before you drive off into the Northern California hills in that 55 Maserati?
Yeah, you know, I never thought I'd quote Oprah Winfrey, but she did say something that really stuck with me, and that is that there's no such thing as luck, and that luck is really the intersection of where preparation meets opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah, I really love that quote. You know, I think the car is really the ultimate user experience delivery mechanism. It appeals to all your senses, and I don't think that there's really anything that I enjoy doing more than getting behind the wheel of an analog, true sports car and taking it on a nice twisty road. It's almost as if the roads are the songs and the cars are the instruments, and I think about that every time I go out. It just brings me so much joy, and I just want to share that with other people.
That was very nicely said. I might take that quote and use that sometime in the future. That was great. And again, what's the best place for our listeners to learn more about sports car adventures?
Well, if you want to kind of see what I'm up to day to day, Instagram is the best spot, Sports Car Adventures, and the website is sportscaradventures.us.
And also, I want to remind all of you, if you're going to be in the San Jose, Northern California area around June 23rd, attend the Coyote Creek Concours. I think you're going to have a fantastic time. It's in a beautiful setting at the golf club in Morgan Hills. Absolutely spectacular. You can say hello to Dave there because he's going to have a big smile on his face from the day before of taking all those people on a tour. You can learn more about that at coyotecreekconcours.com. I'll put links to that on Dave's show notes page. Dave, thanks for being so generous today with your time, your expertise, and for sharing your experiences with the Cars Yeah audience. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity.
This was fun.
You take care of your cars, but who takes care of your investments? Tune-ups aren't just for engines. Updating your financial plan is important too. Your GPS may take you from A to B, but it won't help you on the road to financial freedom. For that, you need a good co-pilot and a very trusted advisor. Chris Kimball, CFP, is just the man for the job. He'll guide you down that road without driving you crazy. For over 25 years, Chris has helped people just like you and me with their financial planning and investments. With a master's degree in financial services, he is eminently qualified, and he's a car guy too. Learn more at chrisvkimball.com or call 866-ON-A-PLAN. Securities through Money Concepts Capital Corp., member FINRA SIPC. CK Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah!